Oregon, Mr. Walden is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I apologize to the panel for not being able to be here to hear your testimony, although I've been trying to work my way through it and will take and read it later today. I represent a district out on the West Coast. Our state of Oregon has 7% of its energy, I believe was the figure, derived from coal production. Most of ours comes from hydroelectric with a pretty good and growing amount of wind energy. And I think one of the questions my constituents would have in any cap and trade program is who gets capped and at what level do you start? And certainly based on how many megawatts your output is versus your CO2 emissions makes a big difference. And so I'd be curious to hear from the panel as we look at a cap and trade system. How do you deal with a region of the country that starts with very, very low emissions? And do we end up getting placed here along with the coal emitters here, and then everybody's told to go down, and we can't? I mean, these are things that my constituents want to know. We hear about price signals. To them, that means how much is my bill going to go up? Because somebody's going to get paid in this deal. We've had folks from Wall Street here who, can't wait to have a new trading system in place. Well, somebody's going to make money on that, and I'm all a private sector guy. But I also pay a lot of electric bills in my business and personally, and so do my constituents. So perhaps somebody could enlighten me. Dr. Izzo?
We would agree with you. Our proposal is that the allocation method be tied to the number of kilowatt hours that an electric generator produces, so as to constantly incent people to produce more kilowatt hours and fewer tons of CO2 for the very reasons you outlined. If you simply grandfathered all of the emissions credits, you are rewarding people who have produced the greatest amount of CO2 and not creating an incentive for them to then lower their CO2 should they choose not to.
Other panelists, you want to talk to me about how you deal with hydro or what you recommend?
From a balanced point of view, I do think that this has got to be all 6 gases. I might say Portland, Oregon is a member of the Chicago Climate Exchange.
Right. And has actually reduced their carbon footprint, I believe.
Yes, fantastically. So I think
we're trying to do our part. We don't want to, in this business of government, no good deed ever goes unpunished. Well, and we're trying to avoid getting punished.
I have 2 points of view, and I know some of my fellow panelists don't agree. There are those who would not be in favor of Portland getting credit for what's been done. That members of this panel state that they shouldn't because it's not. There are bad people as well. I would say you've got to have credit for early action. That's number 1. Number 2, you've got to have 6 greenhouse gases, so the low-hanging fruit that can be accomplished by changes that reduce other greenhouse gases like methane or NOx, any of those, the hydrofluorocarbons, et cetera, can help get rid of it. And I do think if you take the other questions where you have modest targets to begin with, you can achieve them with a great deal of project-based credits. And then if you tighten it later on, you're going to induce the technology. And our experience is even low prices, as I said with the MIT professor, they go that way.
Let me ask you, I've only got a minute left. Let me ask you a different question, and that is this. In the West, we have, like my state's more than 55% federal land. And I've disputed with others about how those forests get managed. One forest fire in my district in 2003 emitted double the amount of carbon into the atmosphere in the matter of weeks that it burned as the entire state of Oregon in a year. We're always going to have fire, but they don't have to be catastrophic. Trees can be carbon sinks if forests are managed properly. And I'm curious if there's any discussion in a cap and trade carbon reduction discussion for how federal policy over management of federal lands should come into play.
We've dealt with the Forest Service on that, and we've also talked about water markets as well, because these are not separable, and I think that there can and will be more interaction with the federal agencies. I would hope so. we have an open door and would like to educate them. And we face this project with parks management in Costa Rica and in other areas, so it's not a unique problem.
Any other comments from the panelists just on that question?
I would
Realize my time's
I would
expired.
encourage that to be part of any offset program consideration.
All right. Mr. McLean?
Just one comment on how we deal with forests, because when they burn, then they grow back and then they absorb. So there's sort of that sector you have to think of in sort of over time how it operates.
Oh, I do. I clearly do. And in fact, I'd like them to grow back faster. And the House approved a bill to do that after a fire, but the Senate, well, you know, didn't quite get around to it.
I won't comment on that.
Oh, I wish you would. Mr. Chairman, my time's expired. If other panelists have quick comment. If not, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walden. The gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey, is recognized for 5 minutes. I'm sorry, 8 minutes. I'll get this right.
Thank you.